Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. I wanted to set the stage for today's episode as it is a continuation of the Mom Rage episode that we did last week with Joy. So first, we received some pretty amazing feedback on this episode. So I heard from moms of neurotypical kids saying this conversation was just as impactful to them as it might be for a mom with a child with special needs. So thank you for that. I love that, because it's one area where we can all share moments and solutions together. It's not you with a neurotypical and me with a neuroatypical. We're not in this alone. We're all in the same path. We're all moms, dads, caregivers, and we all experience those rage moments at one point or another on our journey. The second thing, after my recording with Joy, I actually spoke with my mom about her experiences as a mom of two and as a pediatric nurse practitioner, when the rage inside doesn't come out as verbal abuse, but it actually comes out as physical abuse or response. So as a result of that conversation, I actually asked my mom, Diane Ernst, to join me today. Full disclaimer, this is not an easy, lighthearted chat. So if you are triggered at all by a discussion about abuse, please know this might not be the episode for you. We are going to be honest, and we know that when we're honest, that sometimes means that things can get messy. So welcome Diane Ernst to the show today, and let's talk about physical rage. What it is.
I don't know. I think we should talk about the fact that I said I would never do this again.
Yeah, well, you did. So I sent you an article, which you did not read, but let me read something to you. So this article is titled, "What is Mom Rage and When is it a Sign of a Mental Health Issue?" It's on psychcentral.com. So basically it says this, picture this. It's somewhere around 3 a.m. and you just laid down to go to sleep when your tiny, barely 2-week-old newborn starts crying. You know you're too tired to go get your child a bottle, and your partner promised to help you. So you wake your partner up and ask them to feed the baby. But instead of getting up, they just mutter 5 more minutes and roll back over. How would you feel? Well, if you're a mom experiencing mom rage, you'd probably be livid. And you might not be able to hide your anger much better than a toddler can when you tell them they can't have any more candy, even if you're a generally calm person. Cue the cabinet slamming, yelling, or stomping around the room as you let your partner know just how upset you are. Because that's the thing about mom rage. It's kind of seething, but it's also surprising. Rage that can feel very difficult to control, and it can be set off by the smallest things. Okay. That's what the article starts with. And I read the whole article. It's great. I'll put it in the show notes. But it doesn't actually talk at all about the other side of rage. The other side of, I just did something physical to my child, or I threw a chair, or it doesn't even approach that. And so we're coming at this from that angle. We're not going to get into the whole nurse, et cetera, angle of it, but I do want to talk about, like, in your definition, like, what is physical rage? And there's a whole gamut. There's a whole spectrum of it. So, Mom, in your nursing experience, what type of physical abuse, in quotes, did you see, or could we put into this category?
I think most of what I saw was not heavy duty beat the child abuse. Those children usually end up in the ER because a mandatory reporter saw them. Mostly what I saw was fingerprints on upper arms, maybe a bruise on the buttock, which wasn't even. It's not like they backed into a coffee table. Sometimes you could see little toes being twisted. Those are some really sad situations. And ironically, the baby or toddler learns not to cry. because that simply reignites the rage. So those are probably the worst that I saw in my practice.
So
from a medical viewpoint, the most commonly abused child is a special needs or disabled or atypical child. Those are the children we watched pretty carefully. Physically, I might ask for a 2-month visit rather than a 6-month visit, just to keep an extra eye on them. And, people say, well, that doesn't make sense because they've given up so much for this child. But if you think about, and I can certainly see it with my daughter, the extra demands on the mom, perhaps loss of contacts with others because they don't know what to say. They don't know if they want to interact or if they shouldn't interact, that they very possibly have no outlet because money might be tight due to extra expenses. So those are pretty much the things that you watch for.
I was just chatting with another mom about that whole concept of, I lost a lot of just easy bantering conversation with people because they just didn't know what to talk about. And I don't know if there's guilt involved in them not having my journey. Maybe that's it that stimulates the lack of conversation. But I think a lot of it is just not knowing what to say. We've talked about that a ton on this show of, wow, you just walk up and say, how was your morning? Or what'd you have for breakfast? Or, there's so many ways to just start conversations, but we're all still the same. But you're absolutely correct. You do get cut off. And that's one thing, that there's no outlet. And there's no one that really understands what you're going through. So then you just don't talk about it.
Yeah. And that's why support groups for moms with needy children are so important and hard to arrange, because even if you could do it while your kids were in school, something like that would really help.
It takes a long time to get a child into school. Man, those were the longest years. It's so weird. They went so fast, and yet newborn till 3 years old, those felt like the longest, even just days. Just a day felt like the longest. I could not get to that wine bottle fast enough.
She's not kidding on that, folks.
All right. So now, okay. So the reason we're talking about this is because the Joy conversation about mom rage was very much about verbal abuse. And I expressed the concept that I actually verbally raged on my husband more than Teal. And I don't have physical rage outbursts, but we realize that if no one talks about it, then no one talks about it. And
and then you're terribly isolated, thinking you're the only one that's ever lost it.
Yeah. And you're not. So what gets a mom or a dad or a caregiver to the point of just not being able to, even yelling doesn't satisfy it? I don't know how to even talk about it. This is sad. I don't even know how to talk about it, because it's like a breaking point. Like what gets there?
Let me just start out with saying every mom has moments.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have a special needs child or a normal, in quotes, child. And there's so much that contributes to that. I started thinking about fatigue, but it's more than fatigue. It's exhaustion. A 2-hour feeding every 2 hours. It takes you pick the baby up, you change the diaper, you hold them while you're trying to either nurse or you're trying to get a bottle ready. So then that takes your first 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And then the baby takes 20 minutes to nurse or to take a bottle. And then you have to get them back down in bed and get them settled. By then you're down to an hour. And just about the time you drop off to a dead in the bed sleep, the baby's awake again. And I think another cause is just the never ending work. You're constantly doing laundry or picking up or taking the baby to appointments or whatever. And so there's no time for the mom. And I know you and Joy talked about that a lot. So when you add all those things up, it's like dominoes. They just start falling. it's not only infants. I think we think a lot about the exhaustion with infants, but it's toddlers and preschoolers and school age kids and teenagers who certainly know which buttons to push. But as far as talking the safety part of it, most of it is going to occur between infants and toddler stage. So we're talking newborn to 2, probably.
Yeah. I will say, even though you were going through the feeding thing, and I chuckle because the breast pump things wouldn't work on me. And so I would feed Teal. You were talking about 20 minutes. It would take her 45 minutes to even like get enough. And then she wouldn't take all the milk from me. So then I had to manually express one breast. And then I had to manually express the other breast. Now, I'm telling you, I got arthritis actually from it. No, I'm not joking. It hurt my knuckles.
You weren't 19 when you were a mom.
Yeah, you're right. I was 41 when I started this journey. But so I was up for 2 straight hours, and then I might get an hour of sleep if I was lucky. And then she'd be up and we would do it all over again.
Yeah.
And label all that stuff. But anywho, for me, I didn't have rage then. So fatigue and exhaustion didn't get me in that spot. It was weird. I think I was one in just a complete deliriousness that whatever. I also had a very good baby.
I remember those days.
Yeah. I didn't have a colicky baby. She was very, very good. She hardly ever cried. If she cried, it was like something was really wrong. And, but I know that my irritation, or when that irritation gets to a rage level where it's just an uncontrollable quick response that you don't even know is happening. Now I'm talking verbal right now again. It's happened more since she has expressed her frustration as well. It's been very interesting as she has developed more cognitively and more abilities. I'm seeing that's when I just get lit. Now, I'm still talking about verbal. So what do you think? I don't know if causes is the right word. Like, do you think everyone starts with verbal rage and then it just progresses into physical rage?
What popped into my head was isolation, feeling like, okay, I have a partner like you described who's sound asleep in bed, and I've done this for 2.5 weeks in a row, and I am beyond exhausted, and I can't get help. Think of it as a single mom who has no one to go to. Maybe the parents have kicked the young pregnant woman out, and she has no one to go to. I think those are the situations adding into a cumulative exhaustion that take you from wanting to yell to wanting to pop that baby back in bed just a little too hard.
So that would probably be one of those initial signs. Like if you all of a sudden, I could even think of before that, you're exhausted and you slam something down that you normally wouldn't slam down, like a cup or books or
cupboard door
or a door in general. Like you just slam something that maybe that is a behavior that is not typical of you. That would be a first warning sign of, okay, hold on, mama. That's not a typical behavior of you. And we need to find a solution right now before this escalates to something further.
Yes. And think about that 3 a.m. feeding when that's happening. And there's absolutely nobody to help you. And that's the situation where if you can recognize it, and we're asking a lot of moms, they're exhausted, they're back at work, you got a fussy baby, they're getting no help. And now we're going to ask them to evaluate the situation. Probably not going to happen right then.
Right. And so you do react.
Yeah. And so I want to talk a little bit later about what you can do in the moment.
Well, let's do.
Okay. So I think you have to recognize that you're just plain frustrated, maybe a little pissed off. Here I am. I thought I wanted this baby. I had no idea what being a mother was going to be like. I love this baby, but I'm kind of just up against the wall right now. And I if a mom tells you of any baby they've never been in that spot,
They're
I really
lying.
think they're not being honest with
Right.
themselves, much
Yes.
less me.
Yeah.
So every mom I've known, if they are honest, will express that they have had those times of frustration. The hard part is, you talk about the dominoes, it's the mom's frustrated and exhausted. Now the baby's screaming. The baby picks up on the anxiety, and that builds into the situation. So the crying may increase. Sometimes they're screaming. I mean, it's beyond crying. They're going to scream. And a toddler may strike out at you, or a preschooler, or a school age. I mean, they may just plain strike out at you. And for some moms, that's the trigger. Don't you hit me. I'll show you what it means to be hit.
And then you hit back.
And then you hit back. So what can you do in that moment? All right. It's kind of like timeout for both of you.
Yes. That's what I was thinking. It's a timeout. Really,
it's a timeout.
For you, because you're going to throw a tantrum.
Right. And you're probably already wanting to throw a tantrum.
Yeah.
Hopefully some break along the way says, okay. Who's the adult here? If there's someone to hand that baby to, please do. I don't care if your spouse or partner is in the other bed sound asleep. If you're reaching that point, you have to go in, shake them awake, make them sit up and say, you need to take this baby for half an hour or 15 minutes. I need a break. So if you can do that, then do it. If not, if you're alone, if that person just is plain not going to cooperate, and I know that's happened before, then you put the baby in a safe place. I'm going to just talk about a baby here. And when I talk about an infant, that's up to a year. That's the medical term for an infant. So you put the baby maybe in the crib. Just lay it down, make sure the sides are up. If it's a toddler, it might just be putting them in their room and closing the door. Hopefully they don't know how to turn the knob. And a really big important part that you and I talked about earlier was you need to really express to them, I will be back. I need this break. We're both going to do a timeout. And I don't care if it's a 4-month-old infant. They know what you're saying. I will be back. What do you do then? You might try to go to a place of quiet, whether that's another bedroom, whether it's a porch, whether it's just stepping out on your front stoop, and take 2 to 3 deep breaths. Try to drop your shoulders, because most of us try to hold our ears on our head with our shoulders.
Yeah.
Relax your belly. Be cognizant of the tension in your body. And cry if you feel like it, darn it.
Yeah.
If you need to cry, have a good cry. It can really help.
You may already be crying. I hit those points where Teal was at such a point where I just started crying with her. I was like, I
understand that.
Yeah.
I think I was there with you on those 2-hour feedings. So then let's say that, okay, you can feel yourself. Okay, I'm getting calmer. I can feel it. Take an extra 5 minutes. If your baby's crying in the other room, you know they're safe, and just give yourself that extra 5 minutes of, I'm back in control. You return to the child or the baby and explain that sometimes mama just needs to take a break. And people say, yeah, well, they're not going to understand that. That's not true.
No,
if they don't understand your words, they understand that you're coming back from a better place. And maybe it's a matter of swaddling the baby a little bit more, holding them tight to you. It may be that that's what happened. The toddler had a nightmare. And sometimes that nightmare is a common one for a toddler, is they're feeling like they're being dropped. And I don't know why that is. They just know that is. An infant is being left. They've had this 9 months of intimate time with you in utero. And now all at once they're out here with all these other noises, a car door honking, or a car slamming, a horn honking. So maybe just holding them tight against you and helping them relax a little bit is possible at that time. So
can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
So when you're out on the stoop, let's say, as you were thinking or as you were talking, I thought, if you need to get some physicality out, like if you're feeling you're almost vibrating on the inside, stomp your feet. That's a great way to ground as well. So you remind yourself that you are part of this earth. You remind yourself that you are a physical form that has control over their body. Stomping your feet or imagining roots growing from your feet into the middle of the earth. And, I am a spiritual person. So, I would immediately say a prayer. I'd be like, all right, Mother Earth and spirit team and angels, like, I need help now, or God, I need you to help me right now. I need help. If you can't ask for someone else's help, you ask for your spirit team's help.
And I very often would say, okay, universe, you need to cut me some slack here. Just give me 5 or 10 minutes of calmness. And it's amazing how fast it works.
I also think self-talk in this area is really important, Mom. Dr. Becky does some really amazing things. And on her podcast, she'll talk about, just because I did something bad doesn't make me a bad mom, doesn't make me a bad person. Because I didn't handle that situation right, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. So if you need to have 5 statements in your pocket and in your pajamas, and every single night, I'm just going to read these things. I am a healthy, beautiful human being. I make good choices. I am full of love. I love my child. Whatever those statements are, that might be something too. If you can't get the rat that's going around in your wheelhead, in your head, to stop telling you horrible things about yourself, maybe you need to just have those 5 statements right there every single night.
And I've told parents, moms, this, mainly moms, because that's who comes in. Tape that list to your mirror. Tape it to the baby's door. Because it might just be the 20-second reading that changes how you open that door and approach that child.
I love that.
Yeah, that's
5 statements on the baby's door.
Right. All good statements.
All good statements. And remember, it might be even just at the end, like, remember, this is a little being. Who loves you. And you. And
another thing that you can do as a child maybe gets a little bit older is remember the really special times you've had. Just take that 30 seconds and remember the last time all your baby or toddler wanted was a hug, and how much you gave them a hug. And I also think that 90% of the time, that is where we are with our children or babies. It's just that we don't remember those times. I used to try to keep, and Jen, you're really good at keeping baby pictures out, because once in a while I had to look at the picture and say, oh yeah, I liked them at that point.
That's probably more important when they're like 14.
The pictures maybe never came down.
Is that why my baby picture is still up in your house?
Maybe. That's why I was hesitant to give you a baby book, So I think too that at some point, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, and we're asking a mom a lot here, but look back, and if you can figure out what triggered it, what was the specific run off the cliff moment? And maybe it was the child swatting you, or maybe it was the child had a gut ache and screamed for 45 minutes. And truly, you want to help them as much as you can, but you can't come up with something that helped them.
In the moment, you can't. But if you look back and you're like, hold on,
right,
that 45 minutes of screaming is what got me. But whoa, it was actually the stomach ache. So next time I can quickly try to do the stomach ache first.
Right. And maybe the hint in the next stool, dirty diaper or whatever, is a really non-normal stool. abnormal stool. And you're thinking, well, shoot, if I was going to have diarrhea, I'd have stomach cramping too. And then, of course, you get to feel guilty because why didn't I figure that out sooner? I should have known that. One thing I used to keep around for you was a hot water bottle. And if you just would not settle down, I would put the hot water bottle, not hot, but warm water bottle,
warm water
up
bottle
against my lap. And I would just lay your tummy on it and pat your back. And I don't know if it really helped your cramping or the colicness. I'm not sure that's a word, colicky behavior, but it settled you. And I think it was the warmth and the contact, the touching. I laid you against my shoulder sometimes and put it against, me so that you were up against me. But I think those are times that you can think about later. Oh, shoot, I could use the hot water bottle.
Yeah.
I don't like using heating pads. Yeah. Because they get too warm.
Yeah.
So,
but I like being able to analyze after.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Again,
yeah,
we're trying to catch you ahead of time, right? But
right.
we're not saying after an abusive situation, but we're saying if you can do these things when you're somewhat okay with that bubbling pot, right? Like that we talked about that in that first episode with Joy, is if you've got enough water in there to start feeling it bubble, that's when you're like, okay, hold on. I have a list of 5 things that I know in the past have soothed my child.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll also soothe me. And that's the other thing, is looking at what are 5 things that soothe you too. Is it having an essential oil roller right there in your pocket every single day that you're just like, I've got it with me. And I know that this scent calms me down. Because what you said earlier is so true. That nervous system goes up on me. The nervous system goes up on the baby. So
and
what
can
I
climbing.
do? Yes, you do. You keep climbing.
So if it's possible for the mom, and I know we're talking really hard thing to do, but create a little bit of time that's just yours. It could be 15 minutes where you go outside. It could be 5 minutes where you go outside. Maybe it's a beautiful day, perhaps, and you sit in a chair and you picture nothing to do with your baby or child. You picture something happy that you did maybe when you were in your 20s. For me, if I get frustrated and super tired, even at my age, I sometimes picture myself fishing or working with the horses, or, that's meditative for me. What's hard is if the baby's taking a nap, we want to scurry around and get everything done that we didn't get done 2 days ago. And the laundry's on the sofa and you need to clean up your kitchen and you need to pick up rooms and whatever. My very, very wise mom said, toys are not dirt. And I know she had to do it because her mother-in-law was a little bit of a terror about, well, why isn't the dining room picked up? And mom would say that's where the kids play in the winter, and toys aren't dirt, and so try to not do all of those things I just mentioned. I've often said to moms, nobody's going to knock you out of the way and run in and do that job before you can get to it.
What does that mean?
Well, okay, so you're going to put off picking up the toys and folding the laundry. Have you ever had anybody knock on your door, run in and say, here, I'll do that for you. You can just sit there and rest. That's not going to happen. It's going to be there.
Called a housekeeper.
Right. It's going to be there in that 5 to 15 minutes that you take for yourself. It's not going to go away, but you will handle it better.
Yeah.
If your head's in a good place. And then kind of reward yourself. If you've had a bad night and the baby's been fussy and you've had to read the list 3 times, reward yourself for taking that time and making the choice that helps you.
That's a great point.
Everybody is going to benefit from that. Absolutely everybody. Your spouse, your partner, the baby, you. And maybe a reward means I sit down with a cup of coffee extra, or I sit down and eat a Snickers for Pete's sake, or an apple or whatever.
Or maybe you take 20 minutes and watch that show that you haven't watched since the baby was born, and you
Yeah.
just desperately like, I need that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I
Or
think
a romance, smutty romance novel.
well, I don't know. That might be how you got into this situation. So I think when you think about it, it's common sense. But when your simmering pot is overflowing onto the stove, it's really hard to pull up. So I think visual clues, because I'm very visual clues like the list on the baby's door or the list on your mirror or the list out of your head. I mean, I think some of those things just need to be done and need to be rewarded. And we're not asking, sit down and read a psych book on care of children or something.
Well, God, isn't that what we all do? Especially when
Yeah.
you have infants, you're like, okay, I've got 10 minutes. Oh, I should stimulate my brain with psychological brain and behavior development stages of my 4-month-old. It's what everyone does. Jeez Louise.
You've already learned about your 4-month-old. You're living it.
Yeah, you're living it. This has been really incredible information, Mom. I really appreciate it. The one thing that we haven't really talked about is what you can say to your nurse practitioner or your pediatrician to say, I need some help. You don't want to say, I wanted to beat the crap out of my child. Like, well, you don't want to say that.
Moms say that.
Well, sure you have. And I mean, I think there's a fine line. Mm-hmm. There's a reason we didn't bring a mom on here to talk about her physical mom rage. We can't do that. You can because you're in your 70s and you don't have a child. I can't talk if there were examples. I couldn't talk about them like that. You just can't. So how do you approach a doctor or a nurse practitioner? How do you do it?
Well, I would like to think that those medical professionals pick up on it and will open the door to that conversation. I used to work for a great family doc who would say, how could a well baby check take you 40 minutes? And I'd say, because it's not about the physical stuff, Jim. And
medical physical stuff. Yeah.
Medical physical stuff. And he would say, oh, well, they don't talk to me about anything else. I just kind of shrug my shoulders like Teal does sometimes. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you should open the door. So if a mom comes in and maybe there's some hints the baby hasn't been eating adequately, the weight is down, maybe mom lets the baby lay on the exam table, and doesn't stand beside her. She just sits in the chair and kind of stares, zones out. Those are signs of exhaustion, frustration, whatever. So if you're in that situation as a mom, it's not out of line to say, 5 of the last 7 nights, I've been up with her and she's been crying for 20 to 30 minutes until I give her a little more milk, and then she sleeps for half an hour and then she's back up. I need to know what to do in that situation because I'm getting frustrated.
Ooh, that's good.
And just put it into the context of maybe just the bottle or nursing, or he seems to have a lot of trouble having a poop. And I don't know what to do to help him. And I'm really sad I can't help him, but it's very frustrating to me. I need some ideas on what to do. Hopefully at that point, the medical professional will see the bigger picture.
And I was thinking about Teal swatting. She still does now. It's a little bit different, but man, when she was 4, 5, and 6, I would get smacked. Yeah. I mean, even just yesterday, I got smacked so hard in my lip, and I was like, oh, Teal, that really hurt mommy. I was like, that really hurt mommy. And I was like, ah. But that can be a big old trigger. I know you mentioned it. So I could see myself saying to the pediatrician or the nurse practitioner, I feel triggered when Teal hits me. Like when she hits me, I feel my emotions get a little beyond what I like. What cranked can up. I do? Cranked up. Yeah. What can I do to help me through that situation? It doesn't just have to be about the baby, or is that bad?
No, I think a lot of our issues and problems are we don't make ourselves first. when you have children, you're Teal's mom. You're, you know,
Yep.
you're not Jen so much anymore. You're Teal's mom. And so we just let our self-rewarding behavior go away. And I think that's the swatting is a hard one because your first instinct is perhaps to swat back. I can't say that I see that happen very often, but
With me? Oh, yeah, no.
what?
Me or other parents?
Oh, no, not you.
Oh, I was like, no, it's
no,
not.
no.
I'm like, what?
But it's a
Sorry.
good question to ask because, do you reach up and deflect the hand when you see it coming? Do you take the child and say, that is unacceptable behavior? That used to be one of my great lines. And you're going to sit in your chair until the timer goes off. Timers are great things. And
Yeah.
thank God phones have them.
Well, and that's something too. If you're going to leave the child, I'm kind of diverting back to what you said. If you put the child into their crib and you say, "Mommy will be back. I need a timeout." And now you're not like, "Oh, I love you, Mom." You're probably like, "Mommy needs a break. I'm going to go step out for 5 minutes. I promise you I will be back. I promise." Okay. That might be how it comes out. I'm just saying. Yeah. It's
That's
not
okay.
all peaches and cream. It is. You're saying the words.
Right.
But then I do think it is important to set a timer then as well, not just for a child's timeout, but for your timeout, because you don't want to take 30 minutes while that child is screaming. That is not okay. Or if you lay down on the sofa and you wake up in 2 hours because you're exhausted, not okay.
No.
So that timer is important in that perspective as well.
Yeah. And the child will, at a very young age, understand what that timer means. When it dings or when your phone rings, that's okay. Now, is all forgiven? Are we okay? And then I think that's an ideal time. And I see you do that with Teal all the time. You say, okay, this is what happened. And I know you were frustrated. I know that you didn't like what I asked you to do, but we don't hit. And then just reinforce that. It's not like she's bad for the rest of the day and you're going to make her pay for it. And I think that's important to remember for ourselves too. If we happen to lose control and swat them on their butt, that doesn't mean you're a bad mom. It just means, okay, I have reached my limit. You're going in the chair. I'm going outside for 5 minutes where you can see them. Obviously, you want to keep an eye on them. But I think we have to understand that some behavior doesn't mar you for the rest of the day.
People make mistakes. I mean,
they do.
And it's important that we give ourselves grace. I think this conversation has been extremely beneficial for solutions. And we're really encouraging everyone to, if you can get in front of it, that's what's most important. I'm not condoning physical abuse. This conversation is not about, oh, what happens after? It's like, no, we're really asking you to get ahead of it. Because that's really just the most valuable thing.
Getting ahead of it means that you have to recognize what's happening to you. That's not easy when you're in the middle of it. But if you can just have that little hint in your head of, uh-oh, I'm going to lose it here.
Yeah.
And like you said, get ahead of it, isolate the child, walk away. It's really only a 5-minute practice.
Oh, it probably isn't even 5 minutes. I mean, truthfully, if they're in a safe spot, 5 minutes is nothing.
Yeah. And the simmering teapot really made sense to me when you and Joy talked about it, because if you just see the bubbles start in your head, okay, this is the time to step in. This is the time to hand the baby off. This is the time to tell my husband or spouse or whoever, you need to take him for 20 minutes. I'm out of here.
And there's so many times, we've talked about this before, there's so many times that neighbors will say, just let me take him for a little bit, or just let me. Well, that's also a time, if you have a neighbor and that you're at a breaking point. I mean, I'm even thinking about like an apartment building where you might not even like really, really know your neighbor, but there's this one neighbor across the street or across the hallway that's 60 years old and she's the sweetest woman. And you're just like, I need you to just watch the baby for 5 minutes. I'm just going to sit
Mhm.
right out here outside of this door. You can even leave the door open, but
Mhm.
I need to breathe.
Yeah.
You
We
know?
talked also about using a drive in the car.
Yeah.
If the baby is screaming and you really have exhausted all of the possibilities, they're okay fed, the diaper's okay. Sometimes just putting them in the car and driving around for 20 minutes, but that'll very often put them to sleep or at least calm them. And sometimes it comes down to that. But yeah, we have to remember that we can't beat ourselves up and feel guilty if we have to borrow a neighbor for 5 minutes.
No.
You may have done the neighbor a big favor if they have young children.
Yeah.
Because it's a good lesson for that neighbor.
Well, and it's also you being a good mom.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, by getting ahead of it, by saying, neighbor, I need you for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's being a good mom. There's no guilt around that. That's being the best mom that you can for your child in that moment.
Even if you have to just run up and down the steps for 5 minutes.
Totally.
Give yourself a physical break.
Yeah. I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks for talking.
Not a fun topic, but
it's okay.
A real topic.
An important topic.
Yeah, that's a real topic.
Love you.
Love
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found 1 or 2 meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.